Welcome everyone to the January edition of Trail Tales. I'm Haley Johnston. I'm the Executive Director of Alaska Trails. We host this monthly storytelling event where we partner with another community nonprofit, generally in the trails or outdoor recreation world. Quite obviously, I hope, we are partnered with NSAA tonight with lots of great Nordic skiing stories in our future. I just feel really lucky that we get to do these events with our community nonprofit partners. Alaska Trails, we're a 501c3. We build, maintain, and advocate for trails of all types, but it's really fun to partner with organizations like Single Track Advocates, who are our community bike partners, and NSAA, who are our community Nordic ski partners. I think Kikkan and I actually just came from another event where we were meeting with the mayor and all of these like recreation people across the municipality. And while Anchorage definitely has its challenges, I think Anchorage is the most incredible trail community in North America. I think we are so lucky to have Chugach State Park in our backyard, to have the pioneering NSAA trails here in our municipality where we can sometimes ski out our back doors or ski very close to home. We are just so lucky to live these active and healthy lives outside. So a big thank you to NSAA for making Anchorage a wonderful place to live, work, and play. I'm excited to hear all these stories. Like, I'm actually really friggin' excited to hear all these stories tonight. Our events are always great, but as I told our communication staff, Willie Dalton, who's filming in the back tonight, I said, I think tonight's gonna be a banger. So I think it's gonna be a really good one. And without further ado, I wanna get into the stories. So I'm gonna have Ida come up and introduce herself. She is my co-MC tonight, so I'm handing it off.
All right, thank you. My name is Ida Gullett, and I am the race director for Nordic Ski Association of Anchorage for the last 3 years. Tonight's tales will be building Olympic dreams on Anchorage trails. To introduce NSAA tonight, Jim Rankert, who has been the heart of Alaska's Nordic ski community since the dawn of NSAA. An Anchorage native, he grew up skiing and skating here, beginning cross-country racing in 1972 and went on to race for West High and Middlebury College, chasing an Olympic dream for 6 years. A longtime NSAA member, Jim has had served as a trail volunteer, fundraiser, advocate, announcer, and junior Nordic coach. He retired in 2024 after 33 years with the Alaska Department of Natural Resources. Jim's volunteer leadership includes founding Friends of Nike Site Summit to save Arctic Valley's Nike Hercules site, helping build Alaska's 6th regulation speed skating oval at Cuddy Family Midtown Park, contributing to the Marston Trail at Arctic Valley, and organizing the 3rd Avenue Radicals for rejuvenation in East Downtown Anchorage. Jim?
From Kikkan asking me to do this, and I'm like, and really, I feel like I'm pinch hitting here. The person who really should be doing this is Alice Tower Knapp, my old friend. She wrote the book On Track, which if you don't have, it's available for sale out in the lobby. So please pick it up. That really is the definitive history of the Nordic Ski Association in Anchorage. So cross-country skiing and cross-country ski racing transformed Anchorage. And how did that happen? Well, the first cross-country ski race in Anchorage was in 1917. So it took a while for that transformation to really take place. In the decades following, there were cross-country, downhill, and even jumping competitions, but it wasn't really until the early 60s that skiing, shortly after statehood, that skiing really started to take off. Anchorage only had one high school in 1959, but shortly thereafter, East High opened up. And let me consult my notes here. Hang on. So we had 2 high schools. And so I'm going to make the case that the number one reason that Anchorage is such a great ski town and why it's produced so many Olympians is because cross-country skiing is a varsity sport in our high schools. That doesn't happen in most places in the country. If it's not the number one reason, it's certainly one of the cornerstones of our ski success. And not just in Anchorage, but in other towns like Fairbanks and Homer and now Talkeetna and the Matsu Valley. High school skiing helped build a Nordic culture in Alaska. So I want to put this in a little bit of context. So I was literally there at the beginning of the Nordic Ski Association. 62 years ago yesterday, the first race was held down at Bootleggers Cove. I was just 4 years old. I was watching my older brother race. I don't remember it, but it must have made an impression because my life has been going cross-country, telemark, and downhill ever since. So at that time, there were only 2 high schools, but after a little while, there was 3, and then 4, 5. Now I think we're up to 8. So as a varsity sport in our high schools, lots of kids could go out for a ski team. It was a participatory thing. You didn't get cut. So the high school racers were on a Saturday, but on Sunday, the more serious competitors started racing in the junior national tryouts. And those were hosted by clubs in Anchorage, Fairbanks, and in Homer. And so many of those kids started having Olympic dreams. Our first homegrown Olympians competed in the 1972 Games in Sapporo, Japan. And those included Barbara Britch, Gene Morgan, Margie Mahoney, and Larry Martin. Barbara had gone to West, Gene East, Margie Diamond, and Larry Homer High. Okay. So when I started ski racing in 1972, those 72 Olympians became my heroes. And then in 1976, 4 years later, 5 homegrown Alaskans made it. Bela Bodner, Chris Haynes, Margie and Larry again, and Lynn Spencer. Besides high school skiing, we've grown in other areas in the last 50 years and have contributed to our racer success. UAA, the ski team, and now the growth and development of the Winter Stars program and APU Nordic team. So it's been 50 years since the 1976 Olympics. That's what really, in a lot of ways, really set off cross-country skiing in the United States because of Bill Koch's silver medal. Alaskans have made every Olympic team since then. They have inspired us. They've made us proud. And skiing has kept growing. In so doing, it has done something even more important. It has built community. I want you to imagine Anchorage without Kincaid Park. If it wasn't for cross-country skiing, the Nordic Ski Club, and lots of advocates, including at the time Mayor Tony Knowles, Kincaid, our flagship park, would be off limits to most of us, or all of us. Governor Jay Hammond had seriously considered it for the site for the Alaska State Prison. Yeah, but now we have Kincaid and everything we've done there. So cross-country skiing and cross-country ski racing transformed Anchorage. So the roots of the word community are common unity. All of us here this evening share a common unity around cross-country skiing. We're all part of the pyramid that has helped build and sustain Nordic skiing. Our Olympians represent the peak of that community. So I'm really looking forward to hear their stories. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. Well, I have the pleasure of introducing our first Olympian. Holly Brooks is a former U.S. cross-country ski Olympian, longtime Anchorage coach, sports counselor, and local leader. A late bloomer who made the 2010 Vancouver Olympic team and competed through 2014. She helped spark the rise of the U.S. women's ski team. Brooks coached at West High and with Alaska Pacific University's Nordic Ski Center, won the 50K national title in 2009, and earned a World Cup relay bronze in Gallivare in 2012. Since retiring after the 15-16 season, she's run a counseling, consulting, and coaching practice in Alaska and is a mother to twins born in 2017. Holly came to Alaska drawn by the energetic ski culture, didn't we all? What she didn't know was that her Olympic dream would be born and realized on the trails in Anchorage. From coaching to athlete, Holly made the Olympic and U.S. ski teams and went on to a 5-year career. Since then, she has mentored local Alaskan athletes who are now making their bids to the Olympic team. Let's give a warm welcome to Holly.
Well, I'm going to try to pack a couple short stories into 7 minutes. And I think especially after what Jim said, it's pertinent to talk about what it was like growing up as a skier in Seattle, my first impressions of moving to Alaska, and then one day making the Olympic team. So I grew up in Seattle in the 90s, in the grunge era. And I will tell you, none of my friends cross-country skied. None of them even knew what cross-country skiing was. My dad was my coach. My triplet siblings were my teammates. And weekends went like this. Friday night, we would drive up to Snoqualmie Pass, ski into our cabin in the dark. Saturday morning, we'd ski out of our cabin. 3 generations would teach lessons. We'd ski into the cabin in the dark, spend the night, ski out of the cabin, ski again, and drive back to Seattle. And none of my friends knew what I was doing on the weekends. The next weekend, we would repeat. And so I think that process gave me this deep intrinsic love for skiing. And I did it because I loved it, not because I was a fast racer. And I think that that is kind of a unique lens that serves me to this day. In 11th grade, my U.S. history professor, teacher, I guess, at that level, gave us an assignment called Claiming Your Voice. And the purpose of the assignment was to get up in front of your peers and talk about something that you were passionate about. My friend Sasha went up to the front of the room, pressed play, and sat there stone-faced and played Pink Floyd, We Don't Need No Education. That's the atmosphere I grew up in. I went next, and I had a bit, I took a more bold approach. And I had my yellow one-piece Swix race suit. Maybe, I don't know if it was Swix or Bjorn Dolly with the red and the blue. I know some of you guys know what suit this is. And I roller skied up and down the halls. And all my peers were like, what the heck? That's weird. But okay. So fast forward, and I'm 22, graduating from college. And I met, one of my college teammates is Sarah Shane. And she grew up here on the hillside, skied for Service High School. She really piqued my interest about what Alaska was like. She talked about it all the time. It was actually super annoying. But it did pique my interest. And I thought, what would it be like, to live amongst the trails and the snow? So she recruited me up. I moved to Alaska and quickly became the head coach for West Anchorage High School. Hey, Roz. All of a sudden, I had 100 kids on my team, everything from exchange students who had never seen snow before to the junior national champion, and it blew my mind, right? It blew my mind. And just think about that juxtaposition of Seattle to Alaska. So a couple years later, I was coaching at Junior Olympics with my then boyfriend, now husband, Rob Whitney. And he was rooming with Eric Flora, who's now the director of the APU Nordic Ski Center. We got to know each other, got along, had a lot of fun together. And that summer, there was a Canadian team stuck up on Eagle Glacier. They were weathered in, they had international flights to catch. He gave me a call. Hey, Holly, can you come help me get this team off the glacier? And I said, yeah. Well, at the time, I did not know, but this was one of the more intense job interviews. You can imagine. So we drove down there. We got out of the car. It was the most heinous weather. We had 5,500 feet of elevation, bushwhacking, climbing. If you've done the hike up to Eagle, it's really hard. You're scaling heather and sliding backwards for every 2 steps you take up. We got the team down successfully, safely. And, I guess I physically and mentally passed the test because after that, he offered me a full-time job as a ski coach at APU. And I was one of his first hires many, many years ago after he took over the program. So from then, I like to joke that I skied for fun and I skied for work, or I skied for work and I skied for fun, but they were really the same things to me. And my training partners were the juniors that I coached and the masters that I coached. And without really realizing it, I ended up getting into really good shape. Did a couple races, thought it was an accident, and then at some point I was like, okay, maybe this is something. Turns out U.S. Nationals / Olympic trials were at Kincaid Park. And, you know, huge kudos to organizers and volunteers, because home course advantage is a real thing, right? And so that really helped put the idea in my mind, like, hey, it's right there. Why wouldn't I do this? So I made the team, chased Kikkan around those trails, and surprised myself and everyone else, you know, I guess when I made the team. And a couple days later, the front page of the Anchorage Daily News read, "The coach is in the games." And I think it was actually the day I flew out to Canmore, and I was getting on the plane and people were reading the newspaper, and it was kind of like, it was all very exciting. The best thing that I can liken this to is like playing in the Super Bowl with never having competed in an NFL regular game. So it was a little bit of shock and awe, but a lot of fun. And that really helped jumpstart my ski career after that. So after that, I went on to become one of the members of the U.S. ski team and competed in 2 Olympics, 2 World Championships, and then was part of that team in Jalavari that brought home the first medal for women's Nordic skiing. Oh, I forgot a part. I have to say this. When I was a coach, there was a lot of really fun times, but there was also some dirty work, including one year up at Eagle Glacier, we had to empty the poop tank. So I literally put on a full-piece Tyvek suit and crawled in, and I was shoveling shit into 5-gallon buckets to get sling loaded out. And so for some of y'all who trained on Eagle Glacier, you're welcome for cleaning up after you. I can't let that slide. Okay, where was I? Well, all that to say, I am really excited because in 2 weeks, I get to head over to Italy and have it be full circle. When I was on the U.S. ski team, I was chronologically the oldest one, even though I was maybe the youngest one with ski experience. I was the oldest one. Jessie Diggins was the youngest. And now this is her last Olympics. She's announced her retirement, and I am so excited to cheer her on. And half of the Olympic team, which is going to be from right here in Alaska. Just gave myself goosebumps. So today, I live within walking distance of the trails and within a mile of Kikkan and Sadie Bjornsson. And it is so fun being World Cup teammates, U.S. ski team teammates, and now raising our kids together and and skiing with them. Almost. Well, I'm thankful to be in Alaska almost all of the time. Sometimes, you know, the frigid temperatures or whatnot. But the Alaskan trails, the mountains, our community, and our volunteers really, really create that common unity, and it definitely changed the trajectory of my life. So, thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Larry Martin, who is a lifelong cross-country skier from Homer, Alaska. He was coached by Dave Schroer from elementary school all the way through high school. He earned a place on the Alaska Junior National Team all 4 years of high school, and on the advice of Jim Mahaffey, he accepted a full scholarship to Fort Lewis College in Durango, where he trained under Dolph Coos and competed in NCAA events. In 1971, he was named to the U.S. ski team and quickly qualified for the 1972 Winter Games in Sapporo. He went on to represent the United States in the World Cup in Falun in 1974 and Innsbruck in the Olympics for 1976. After coaching at CU Boulder for 2 years, he returned to Homer in 1980, and his family with his family and remained active in the sport. In 2024, at age 73, he won his age group at the 25K Classic for the Tour of Anchorage. I am Larry Martin's daughter, and I'm following in his footsteps, has a passion for Nordic skiing. Larry will be telling a story about growing up in Homer and being inspired by early coaches to pursue the sport beyond Alaska, ultimately taking him to races in Europe in the first golden age of U.S. skiing. He will touch on how the sport has been more than just a competition, and it is a lifelong pursuit and is the blood of Anchorage, Alaska.
Thank you. First of all, I need to warn you, I'm older than I look. My stories go way back in time. I remember packing a trail with snowshoes, then setting a track with the skis. I look at the NSAA piston bullies and drool. My second warning, I'm from Homer. My high school, junior high coach, Dave Shore, bought his own double track ski-doo. We rigged up our own track setter by bolting a couple of oak 3x3s to the back of it, about 4 inches apart, pointing down. They set a real good trail. Dave liked to hunt ptarmigan with his snow machine, so I had lots of trails to train on. A lot of the time I was skiing in the dark by myself. One evening I was skiing one of Dave's loops with a headlamp that took real heavy battery pack. I skied once around. The second time around, my headlamp showed where a lynx had followed me. I sang real loud until I saw where he had turned off my trail. The 5-kilometer track my high school team trained on had lots of gradual uphills and downhills, most of it in the open terrain. I think that helped me build a strong kick and glide. But it took coming to Anchorage and skiing at Russian Jack Springs to make me realize how exciting good ski trails could be. Quick turns, sharp uphills, sharp downhills, nice bridges. I love skiing through the aspen and the cottonwood. Trees so close made me feel fast. I love skiing. Those trails were exhilarating to me. I broke a pair of 215 Bana skis at Russian Jack. My coach wanted me to show the team how to take a bump on one of those fast downhills. I took it in a tuck, got airborne, fell forward. One of those ski tips poked between two of my ribs. Yes. Delaminating the ski tip and flattening it. I've broken a lot of skis in my time. And that was not the only time I failed at demonstration. Jim Mahaffey was coaching our junior national team in 1969 when the championships were held at Alyeska. He asked me to show some of the skiers how to take a sharp turn. It had a 4 or 5 foot bank out on the outside, so you could tuck through the corner and make a lot of time up. Well, I'd made that corner easily 3 or 4 times, but when I was demonstrating, I rode the bank too high, flipped over, and out of sight. One Thanksgiving, I flew up to Anchorage for a training camp sponsored by the U.S. Army Biathlon team. The biathlon range was halfway up Arctic Valley Road. At the start of the camp, we were watching the Army team get ready to shoot. When the first shot was taken, some guy behind the target simultaneously set off a charge of dynamite. It was a good stunt. got our attention. One of those things the Army could do to get kids interested in biathlon. Years later, I qualified for the 1974 World Championships racing on those biathlon trails, and also Little Campbell Lake. I was glad of the home court advantage, especially at the lake. I heard a pack of skiers behind me crash into each other, trying to avoid that dock that I had known to ski around. In high school, we raced on Moose Run Golf Course against the Anchorage teams. I should mention that the Homer ski team was a top contender in those days. We took the state championship in 1968. The Moose Run race that I remember best, the boys skied 2 loops, starting first. Then the girls started 1 loop of their race. As I started my second loop, a girl was starting her first just in front of me. I wanted to pass her, but it took all I had and most of the loop to catch her. She was Barbara Britch, famous here in Anchorage for her speedy skiing. Both of us went to Sapporo on the 1972 Olympic team. I retired from the U.S. ski team after the 76 Olympics. In 1982, I returned to Homer, ready to settle down. I didn't think about ski racing until my daughter Ida decided to cross-country ski instead of swim. That got me back into the sport. A lot had changed in Homer and in Anchorage. Homer had 3 good trail systems. Kincaid was well developed. Skate skiing had emerged as part of racing. Ida and her high school coach asked me to help because I could classic ski. But Ida made it clear to me I was not to ride on the bus with the team. That did not break my heart. I realized that was a smart request. I would have enforced some old-fashioned rules. I won't apologize for the way I am, demanding and set in my ways, very much like a perfectly groomed classic ski track.
Thank you. All right, our next Olympian, we've got Rosie Frankowski, a 2018 cross-country skier from Minnesota. She joined the Alaska Pacific University Nordic ski team in 2015 and trained in Anchorage, going on to represent the U.S. on the World Championship team in 2019. Rosie is a core member of APU's Women's Powerhouse Training Group alongside Kikkan Randall, Rosie Brennan, and Sadie Bjornson-Mobe. Rosie has pursued multiple master's degrees, because being an Olympian isn't impressive enough, while competing at the highest level. Off the snow, she's led a Learn to Ski program for Tyson Elementary, a Title I school here. And at 5'2", with a generous, bubbly spirit, she is a proven climber and has topped Mount Marathon races. It wasn't until Rosie reached Alaska to train with the APU team that she realized her love of mountains and adventures could take her to the Olympics. Training side by side with the tight-knit women's team at APU, Rosie blossomed as a skier. She's taken her incredible fitness on many Alaskan adventures and has chosen to stay in Alaska post-competitive racing career because of the trails and the people here. Let's welcome Rosie.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad that we all know I'm 5'2", so I actually am 5'1 3/4, but I round up. So as Haley said, I moved to Anchorage in 2014. I came here to ski at APU on their elite team. I grew up in the Midwest in Minneapolis, and then I went to college in Michigan. And the Midwest is a lot different than Alaska, as most of you know. And I had really never been around mountains and the ocean. And I mean, Alaska just blew my mind. It was breathtaking. I couldn't it was like unimaginable, honestly. I had, you know, like watched those Alaska TV shows, and I had read National Geographic articles, but when you actually land here and you see what we have, it was just insane. And I was lucky because APU trained on the trails. We roller skied on the bike paths, we ran in the mountains, hiked, and I just couldn't believe that like my job was actually just out on these trails and in the mountains and everywhere. So it was really incredible. Fast forward 4 years, and it was an Olympic qualification year. And I didn't really set my sights on making the Olympics. I learned how to ski in high school, and I had been okay in college, got better at the end. But then those years at APU, I had mixed results. They weren't terrible, but they were not on the caliber to make an Olympic team. And so I was the most shocked of anyone when I had a breakthrough season in the beginning, and I got named to the team to Pyeongchang in South Korea. So I was flying over to Pyeongchang. I land in South Korea. I had never raced a World Cup. I hadn't won US Nationals or Super Tour. So I was just like, similar to what Holly said, I was out of my element. The Olympics are like an experience above and beyond what you could imagine in terms of just, it's not just skiing, it's all these sports, and it's incredible. Like in my head, I was like, oh, people that go to the Olympics are like Shaun White and Michelle Kwan, and you know, these famous people, not me. It was just mind-blowing. I mean, even my family was like, wait, what? Like, that's not what we do. So it was very just kind of overwhelming, but we get there, and one thing that I was told beforehand was that I wasn't likely to start any of the races. So I kind of went in with this idea that I'm going to do a training camp, and I'm going to eat Asian food at the dining hall, which was great. Highlight of the games. But towards the end, about 2 days before the games ended, I was told that I would get to start in the 30K mass start. And I just was like, wait, what? Now I'm not just this, you know, kind of imposter at the Olympic Games. I'm actually a participant. Like, I get to race. It was all of a sudden just like my world was opening up. And so I'm walking out on the snow in my US suit that I had never worn. And we walk out to line up like where the race is going to start. And I'm looking around, and I'm seeing people that I've only ever seen on TV. And I'm not just starstruck. Like, I'm like, oh my God. And trying to not like act like I'm totally starstruck, because everyone else is really playing it cool, and they're all like, you know, trying to win a gold medal or something, and I'm just like, oh my God. And we line up, the gun goes off, and I start skiing. And normally when you do a race, because I'm sure most people in here have known the pain cave of racing, you know, it hurts. It's uncomfortable. You want to stop. You maybe pass out at times. Not that I'm speaking from experience, but I don't remember feeling any pain in this race. Like, no, I mean, I was going as hard as I could, but it was so magical. It's almost hard to describe. And I was going along, and we have V boards, which I bet you guys know. They kind of mark the trail of the ski course. And at the Olympics, all the V boards had the Olympic rings on them. And so even when you would start, you know, thinking about something else, which was hard to do, but, you know, it could happen, you would see a V board and be like, oh my God, I'm at the Olympics. And I didn't really race in a pack. I like skied by myself almost the whole race, just kind of in between groups, which even led to more of like me just being like, oh my God, this is crazy. And a 30K is a really long race. So I had a good like 90 minutes, at least at my speed, to soak it all in. And I remember finishing, and just, it was like, you know, the kind of cheesy way to say it is like my Olympic dream was born and realized right in that, you know, 90-minute period. It was just otherworldly. Like, I've never had a feeling like that since, of just being in the moment and knowing how cool the experience is. So fast forward another 4 years, and now it's the qualification to the 2022 games. And in that 4 years, we all had a lot happen. COVID hit. I got to go race on the World Cup. I got to race at World Championships. I was a lot more of a seasoned skier at that point. But I also had retired from skiing in 2020 before COVID actually hit. So I planned to leave the sport, and I was actually on a trip in Mexico to the tip of Argentina, like a year-long travel, when COVID came, and me and my travel partner got turned around and were plopped right back in Alaska. And I just was like, well, I've only been retired for like 3 weeks, and I actually didn't miss any races because COVID happened, so I guess I'll keep ski racing. And so I set my sights then on, I'm going to try to make the 2022 Olympics. And this was way different than that first time. Like, I was not a nobody. Making your second Olympic team, at least in my experience, was way harder than making that first one. And it was scary to actually say it out loud of like, oh, this is what I'm going to try to do. And then also put all my bags in one basket, or eggs, excuse me. Also, I'm from Minnesota, so you can hear bags, eggs, But so I put all my eggs in this, like, in the ski racing basket, and I was still working outside of skiing, but it really became the main focus. And that was something that was also a little bit hard, just to actually be vulnerable like that and say, this is going to be my goal. So the season starts, and I was on the domestic circuit. I wasn't on the World Cup. And that year we had, I don't know, maybe like 10 women on the World Cup just kicking butt. They were doing amazing. And I knew it was quite a long shot that they would take multiple people from the US. I thought maybe one person could come from the domestic circuit. And that was going to have to be me if I wanted to be on the team. So I trained and whatever, I raced, and I actually had some of the best races, I think, at least results-wise, that I've ever had. I won a sprint qualifier at US Nationals, which I'd say, I guess it would have been 8 years previous to that in college. I was 97th in the sprint qualifier. So I was like, if I'm winning a sprint, this is like, I'm a distance skier, not a sprinter. So that, it was just, I had some really great results, but I didn't make the team. I was one of the alternates for the Beijing team. So it was disappointing, to say the least. It was really hard. There's kind of a whirlwind of emotions you go through of, I was embarrassed and kind of ashamed. I felt guilty that I had put my partner at the time and my life kind of on hold to pursue this thing. And then just also, I knew it was my last season. And so there's that sadness of like, once you're going towards a goal, you meet it or you don't meet it, and then you're coming down from it. And it's like, oh my gosh, what's gonna be next? And so I went and raced the rest of the season. I got to race the Norwegian Birkenbinder, which was a super cool experience for me. So it was, it ended on a positive note. But I came back to Alaska, and I was trying to think, what's going to be next in my life? I have a couple degrees. I don't know if I actually want to work in those fields. I had worked in nonprofit for 6 years and was a little burnt out after COVID with a lot of stuff going on there. And I was really just kind of uncertain. And then about 2 months into that summer, my long-term relationship ended unexpectedly. And I had been with that person for 7 years, and we had kind of, it had shaped what I thought my future was going to be. At this time, I was 30, and, there was goals and plans that I had for my life that all of a sudden were gone. And so in the matter of 2 months, I not only lost my Olympic identity, my athletic identity, my Olympic dream had kind of come and gone, that journey had ended. And then all of a sudden, the relationship that I had really built my life around was gone as well. And I did not know what to do. I was in a place that was really dark and really, really challenging. Each day was basically about survival. It was not about, trying to move towards that next goal or yay, I'm gonna go do this. It was just, how can I get through this hour? How can I get through this minute? Where can I find some peace? And that's where the trails came in. The one thing that I did every single day was I went outside and I went on the trails. Whether that was here in Anchorage or in the lower 48, or I ended up traveling in South America, I went on trails. And sometimes it was a walk. Sometimes it was, I'm gonna try to run and I'm gonna cry for 2 hours. Sometimes it was, I'm gonna sit on a bench for 2 hours. It just was, I'm gonna get outside and I'm gonna go into the woods or into the mountains and experience that kind of awe and wonder that our places give to us, especially when we're in a place where you're really depressed, really anxious, and you don't feel like you have belonging anywhere. And the trails started creating that sense of belonging. I could be whoever I wanted. I didn't have to try to figure out what life was going to look like. I didn't have people asking me like, okay, like what's next? And it just gave me a sense of peace and that space that all of a sudden I could come back to myself. And I started to try to rebuild myself, find who I was before skiing, find who I was before this relationship, or who I turned into being during it. And really return to like what is actually me? What are the essences of my sport, of my life, of this last, 8 years that I've experienced these crazy things, and what can I bring forward and find what will be next? And so I kind of like to say the trails in Anchorage, they didn't just build an Olympian. They built somebody who knew and learned how to keep going after that Olympic dream was done. So thank you.
All right, I have the honor of introducing Nina Kemppel, also known as America's Queen of the Ski Trails and Alaska's Queen of the Mountains. She is a former elite cross-country skier whose 13-year international career included 4 Winter Games and a record 18 national championships. In Salt Lake City, 2002, she finished 15th in the 30-kilometer classic and the highest Olympic finish by an American woman at that time. She helped raise U.S. World Cup standards, mentored countless skiers, including a young upstart Kikkan Randall, and proved her mountaineering medal by winning Mount Marathon 9 times, 8 in a row, while training year-round in Alaska's rugged peaks.
Thank you, Ida. Well, like many of us growing up in Alaska and training for skiing and mountain running, I have the pleasure of running on so many wonderful trails in Alaska. It was hard to tell a story about just one, but there is one that stands out. It's not the most rugged, it's not the most challenging, it's maybe not even the most scenic, but it's a trail that's near and dear to my heart, and one that was interwoven with my kind of Olympic journey. And that is Crow Pass Trail. I'm sure many of you have been up it. It's kind of a standard. It's been in 55 Ways Through the Wilderness since the beginning of time. And I think I probably went up it as a really young child. But my first distinct memory of it was at the end of the Eklutna Traverse. I was 12. My dad convinced me this would be a good weekend activity. So we decided to do the Eklutna Traverse. And the culmination of the first day of the Traverse, my dad fell in a crevasse on Whiteout Glacier. By the time we got him out, he was hypothermic. By the time we got him to the Hans's hut and got him into a sleeping bag, he really was not that helpful. I was 12. I didn't know how to start the stove, but I figured it out. And I made us coffee and some somewhat inedible oatmeal for dinner. So by the time we made it down Whiteout Glacier, up Eagle Glacier, down the head wall, and out Raven Glacier, and we hit that trail, I remember seeing the Crow Pass Crossing trail sign. I was so happy to be on a trail. And I was thinking, okay, we're almost done with this adventure. What a great story to tell. But as we kind of progressed down the Crow Pass Trail towards Girdwood, the avalanche conditions were high and the going was quite slow. We were going half an hour every 3 hours, and we quickly figured out that we weren't going to make it down before dark and that a bivouac was in our future. So my dad and I camped somewhere, we think, on the Crow Pass Trail for the night in the cold. And I remember that. But what I really remember was waking up in the morning, and the glorious sun was crossing into the valley there, lighting up the mountains in pink. And I just remember thinking, and I was 12, so this was a pretty brilliant thought for me at 12, this is the most beautiful thing that I've ever seen. And it gave me such a strong sense of place and such a strong appreciation for the beauty that we get to share and the adventures we get to have in Alaska. I got to figure out a way to make this a career. But at that moment, I think I really was instilled in me the beauty of the mountains, and I think that beauty really has inspired my desire to pursue an Olympic dream and to continue training and continue to running up Crow Pass Trail every chance I got. So fast forward a year, I'm in 9th grade. I'm at the state championships in Solcha, and I'm not particularly good. Consistently top 10, but not particularly great. But my coach, Rick Capalla, high school coach Rick Capalla at the time, decided that he was going to teach me how to skate ski by just not waxing my skis at the state championship race, which meant a couple of things. I ended up winning the race because everybody else missed the wax, and so I had no wax and I skate skied. But I also stopped at the top of the last hill and almost didn't win the state championship because the hill was steep and it was nasty and gnarly, and it was completely rutted up, and I was very timid on the downhills. I was 5'2", 90 pounds, and a little bit, a freshman in high school, a little bit scared of the big hills. And my coach at the time was Jim Galanis, former Olympian, and an inspiration to many of us up here. He said, Nina, we got to do something about this downhill technique. So that spring, he pulled me aside and he said, what I want you to do is I want you to go follow Tim Miller. Anywhere he goes on skis and do whatever he does. And he's going to teach you how to ski any downhill you ever encounter. And Tim Miller was absolutely one of the best skiers who could do anything on cross-country skis. With all due respect to Bill, who is probably the god of downhill of skiing on cross-country skis. He can really do anything. But I did. I followed Tim Miller anywhere. And I remember Tim saying, we're going to Crow Pass. And so I got my skis, and I'm this little freshman, and I show up, and I try to follow him up the hill. And we get to the top, and he says, we're going to learn to do jump ski turns today. And he takes me up to the intermediate hill, and it's perfect corn snow, and he kind of teaches me how to skate ski around on the corn snow, and then he takes me up the hill, and he teaches me how to jump turn on my cross-country skis, and I'm thinking, I'm getting the hang of this. He teaches me how to do a run out in case I miss the turn, and I can kind of pull it out without digging in and getting road rash on my uncovered legs while we were skiing in shorts. And at the end of the day, he taught me how to be really light and quick on my skis. So the culminating run, he takes me to the top of this long chute, and I look down, and at the bottom is Crystal Lake, which is a beautiful lake right at the top of Crow Pass. Pristine blue water, ice running right into it in the spring. And I said, Tim, what happens if I mess up? He said, well, here's the good news. The good news is the snow is perfect. The corn snow will turn perfectly as you carve each turn. And if you mess up, you're going to end up in that lake. And I will say that was the first time that I could say I really crushed it on cross-country skis. And I owe Tim Miller everything for that lesson in life. And fast forward 10 years, I was at the Olympics in Lillehammer, and it was my second Olympics, but it was the Olympics in Norway. And this is where mere mortal cross-country skiers all of a sudden become Greek gods. You're worshipped by everyone, and there are hundreds of thousands of Norwegians who are camped out for 2 weeks on the trails just to get a glimpse of any ski race that they can. They're climbing over fences. They're a little crazy, but they're absolutely avid fans. They know who every skier is. And I'm in my second race competing, and it was a really blistery, snowy day, and there was a very, very nasty downhill right in the second half of the race. And as I came over the top of the hill, there were 4 women in front of me yard sailed all over the trail. And I said, how am I going to get down this hill? And I thought back to what Tim Miller taught me on Crow Pass Trail, and I slalomed through them. And as I did, the Norwegian fans went silent. And then all of a sudden, they broke out serenaded into my downhill with "Born in the USA." And it is a moment that I will remember for forever. But it's a moment that really was grounded back into that 13-year-old at Crow Pass. But Crow Pass to me is a trail more than just learning and growing how to ski, and more than just kind of coming to truly appreciate Alaska's beauty. It's a trail of reflection. My Nagano experience wasn't quite as uplifting as my experience in Lillehammer. I went there with great hopes and dreams, but I was sick with the virus. And let's just say I got second to last, and the 2 people I beat were Chinese, and they just learned to ski the year previous, so the coaches said, Nina, you're benched. And I came home from the Olympics, I went to the doctors, and they said, you're likely never going to ski at that level again. You should think about pickleball. And I could really relate to Rosie's words. Those were some dark times with some really hard decisions about what was lying in front of me, what was next for somebody who really had spent her whole life training for and preparing for the Olympics. So I picked up, I did what I love to do. I picked up my skis and I went to Crow Pass and I hiked up. And as you get up to Crow Pass, right before the mine, there's a couple of benches. And I was on the trail and I bent down to put on my cross-country skis. It was springtime, so I could get on my skis a little lower than the pass itself. And right at the corner of my eye, I looked up and there was a gray wolf sitting right up above me. And I will never forget this moment. And the gray wolf was just sitting there watching me like, what is this person doing, trying to ski up the side of a mountain? And I skied for a little while, and he just paralleled skied right above, just kind of trotted right along the bench right above me. And I would stop and look at him, and he would stop and look at me, and we continued this way for a mile up the valley. And finally, I was so curious. I mean, I find wolves very interesting anyway, but this wolf was following me. So I finally said to this wolf, what do you think I should do? Should I keep pursuing my dream and train really hard for the next 4 years, or should I retire gracefully and find the next challenge in life? And the wolf just sort of looked at me and gave me this expression that emanated strength, courage, fortitude, but it was clearly a look. And it was a good 10 seconds that we sort of just stared at each other, and then it turned and wandered off to the valley above. But it was at that moment that I knew that the next 4 years were going to be difficult. They were going to be crawling back to the form that I was used to being in. And every step of the way was going to be hard, but that I was going to give it every bit of energy that I had. And I did. And as Ida mentioned, Salt Lake City turned out to be my best race and finish ever. And many of the doctors who told me that I would never ski at that level again were there cheering me on. So it was a great experience to kind of finish that way. But I will always have a special place in my heart for the Crow Pass Trail, because it reminds me, every time I go there, I take a friend or a visitor to Alaska. It reminds me of the true beauty that we get to hold here in Alaska, and the trails that we get to climb up, and the great opportunities that we have to truly enjoy the mountains, the nature, the streams, the snow. It reminds me that, well, it's the first place that I really learned to earn my turns, as we say. And then finally, it reminds me of the strength and hope that the mountains give us all, and we can't get there without our trails. So thank you for that.
I love that our local trails, you're just as likely to see someone like on their first day in Alaska, visiting, walking up Crow Pass, as a 12-year-old who's just had an epic where they possibly saved their father's life, as a like current Olympian. Like all three of those demographics are all on Crow Pass, which is really rad. I love that. Awesome. All right, I have the pleasure of introducing our next story. Our next story is about Lynn Spencer. Lynn is unable to be on stage telling her story tonight, but Kikkan is going to tell it on her behalf. And Margaret Lynn Vonderheide Spencer, born June 6th, 1954, in Anchorage, Alaska, is a former American cross-country skier who competed from 1975 to 1984. She finished 7th in the 4x5 kilometer relay at the 1984 Winter Olympics in Sarajevo. Spencer's best World Cup career finish was 9th in a 10-kilometer event in Canada in 1983. Lynn skied alongside her brother Bill. She competed in the World Cup in Anchorage in 1983 and was named to 3 Olympic teams, 76, 80, and 84. Lynn has also been a groomer for NSAA, so doing real heroes work for all of us here in Anchorage. And this story is about competing in the early World Cup and what it was like to ski at the World Cup event in Anchorage in 83. Thanks, Kikkan.
All right. Well, just pretend I'm Lynn, because she's right here. Can you all see that? This is a real honor. We do have Lynn in the room with us. She's in the back here. But if you want to understand Lynn Spencer, you don't start with Olympic rings or finish lines. You start on a homestead in Kenai. Picture a young girl on a wide stretch of land where winter wasn't something you escaped from, it was something you lived inside of. Lynn grew up with space to roam and a dad who believed that if you wanted to ski downhill, you should probably earn it. So he built an alpine hill right there on their land. Lynn and her siblings hiked up and skied down, again and again, all day long. They explored marshes, they skied Johnson Pass and Summit Lake. They rode a rope tow in Soldotna. Their skis? Heavy white elephant wooden skis, modified by their dad. 3-pin bindings, sometimes cable bindings. Telemark turns on whatever they had under their feet. This wasn't training, it was childhood. And it quietly built a foundation that would last a lifetime. At 14, Lynn's world shifted. Her father, who worked for Fish and Wildlife, was transferred to Anchorage. The homestead gave way to the big city. It was a jolt, but Lynn kept skiing. Alpine at the family cabin in Girdwood every weekend. At 15, she qualified for the Alaska Alpine Junior National Team. But then, tragically, 2 weeks before the race, she broke her leg. The next year, she made the team again, and this time raced at the Junior Nationals in Mammoth. And remember, this was all pre-Title IX. Opportunities were limited, expectations were low, but Lynn didn't wait for permission. Around that time, she decided to run cross-country for Diamond High School. Encouraged by the principal, Dick Mize, and then coaches Lynn Hinderman and Lynn Romigo, Lynn figured she'd try cross-country skiing during the week. That winter, she qualified for the Junior Nationals in Nordic, too. Then came the 1972 cross-country Junior Nationals at Middlebury, and everything changed. Lynn won the first race. She finished second in the next. The Alaska women's relay team was strong. Lynn will tell you she didn't have great technique, but she was fit, and fit enough to get noticed. The U.S. ski team invited her north to race at the top of the World Championships in Inuvik and named her to the national team before she finished high school. But upon graduation, prodded by her academic parents, Lynn enrolled at UAA and joined the ski team. After a semester or two, she then transferred to Alaska Methodist University so she could race both Alpine and Nordic. At 19, she married George Vonderheide, and that winter, they moved out to winter sit a lodge at Wood River Tikchik Lakes. And this is where one of the most important chapters of Lynn's story begins, even if she didn't know it yet. Her husband had built a track sled to pull behind a snow machine. Lynn packed down ski loops and then went out and skied them. Alone, in the dark, doing lap after lap, with only the sound of wolves in the distance. She thought she was passing time. What she was really doing was building an enormous aerobic base and discovering a love for setting a perfect track. At the same time, her close friend, Ann Thomas, was competing at the 1972 Olympic trials. Watching Ann chase the Olympics lit a spark in Lynn. She wondered quietly, what if I tried? 4 years later, Lynn went to the 1976 Olympic trials in Telemark, Wisconsin. After the first race, she did okay. Her coach, Jim Burkholder, looked at her and said something that would define her career. I don't think you wanted it badly enough. That was all it took. Lynn came out charging in that next race and qualified for the 1976 Olympic team. At the games, though, reality hit hard. Lynn got the flu. She started the 5K, made it over the first hill, and had to drop out. But after the games, she raced in World Cups in Lahti, Falun, and Oslo, and she was hooked. Training back then was simple. Go hard and go long. Lynn trained without much coaching, without much recovery knowledge, and without much support. So she recruited her younger brother Bill as her training partner. They ran mountains across south central Alaska, roller skied wherever they could find smooth pavement, including the Black Pow of the Old Glen Highway, and trained on the early trails at Kincaid and Russian Jack. On the road to the 1980 Olympics, Lynn moved to Vermont and trained on the icy, twisting Putney trails designed by John Caldwell. Those trails shaped her eye. for line choice, flow, and precision. She probably trained too much, but she learned deeply. The 1980 Olympics were unforgettable and brutally competitive. The Soviet bloc skiers were on another level. So Lynn returned to Alaska, kept training, and kept pushing. In 1984, Lynn and Jim Galanis started what would become the Junior Nordic program in Anchorage. In those early years, Lynn remembers a young blonde skier who always showed up 5 minutes late, scrambling to catch the group. That skier was Kikkan Randall. After the 1984, Lynn stepped back from elite racing. Her body had paid the price. She went to school, earned a biology degree, and quietly began shaping the sport in another way. In the late 1980s, Lynn started grooming trails for the Nordic Ski Club of Anchorage. She learned snow machines, snowcats, track setting, and because she was a skier, she tested her own work. She obsessed over the best line. For Lynn, grooming wasn't maintenance, it was stewardship. It was about creating opportunity. For decades, she shaped the tracks that carried thousands of skiers, kids, masters, Olympians, forward. In 2018, when the U.S. women finally struck Olympic gold, Lynn helped tell their story behind that moment through the book Trail to Gold. And then she did what she had always done. She looked forward. With the proceeds from the book, Lynn led the creation of the Trail to Gold Women's Coaching Grant, helping dozens of female coaches support athletes on the World Cup. Because Lynn knew, from lived experience, how much it matters to have someone who understands you at the highest level. Lynn Spencer may never raise her voice. She definitely doesn't seek the spotlight, but her tracks are everywhere. From a homestead hill in Kenai to Olympic start lines to perfectly set corduroy under a cold Anchorage sunrise, Lynn has spent her life building paths, and generations have followed.
All right, and again, following his sister, we're going to announce Bill Spencer. Bill is a mountain running legend and a leader in Alaskan trail building. As a civil engineer, he has designed and built numerous trails in and around Anchorage, including the Spencer Loop on Hillside and the Leakish Trail out at Kincaid. An elite endurance athlete, he held long-standing records on Mount Marathon. As a junior in 1973 in 24 minutes and 34 seconds. As a senior in 1974, 41 minutes, 11 seconds. And in 1981, a benchmark that stood until 2003, he ran it in 43 minutes and 21 seconds. Crow Creek Passing, he ran from 1989 to 2006. Bird Ridge from 1989 to 1996. He was a member of the 1988 Olympic cross-country ski team, coached at UAA's Nordic program for more than 10 years, and is a former U.S. orienteering team member. Welcome to the stage, Bill.
See if I've got some notes here. Yeah, thanks for bringing me back up here. I was on up here once before. Told another story about Eagle Glacier, and this one, my story tonight, actually 2 stories, are not about trails at all. I tried out for 3 different Olympic teams, only made one of them. Started in '76 and watched my training partner Bela make that team, and went to the '84 trials, got sick, didn't make that one. There's a theme here. And then I finally made it in '88. So what I wanted to talk about was the transition of the sport from classic skiing to skating, and what that meant to backcountry skiing in Alaska. So I'm going to start at the end, and then I'll work back. So picture yourself, you get up, the alarm rings at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you wake up, and it's late March, early April. It's a beautiful sunny morning out there. And you drag yourself out of bed, and grab some coffee, throw your skis in the back of the old beat-up Subaru, and head south. And you get down to Portage or Turnagain Pass or wherever it's going to be, and there in the parking lot are 100 of your best friends, and you look out onto the lake there, and there are skiers everywhere, and everybody's skating off towards the snout of the glacier, and it's just a beautiful morning. Crystal clear, sparkling off the snow, and you push off into that, and it's just amazing. So now, I'll back up. In 1981, I was coaching the women's team at Montana State University. I had graduated there with a degree in biology and coached the women's team there for a couple of years. And in 81, I got tired of standing beside the trail. I guess I was a little bit like Holly. I thought, well, maybe I should give this another shot. And so I got back into skiing. And in 83, Lynn and Jim and I established the Eagle Glacier Camp. And when I think back on that, I realize that we didn't groom for skating. It was strictly a classic camp. We had a snow machine and we dug tracks and went out and skied on them. So that was prior to the '84 Olympics, and both Jim and Lynn made that team, and I had overtrained so bad that I got sick and didn't make it. But that spring of '84, I wound up on a U.S. ski team trip doing the Polar Cup races in northern Scandinavia. And there was a series of, I don't know, maybe there were 10 races in around these little Finnish, Norwegian, and Swedish towns. And I think the last one sort of culminated in a race in Kiruna, which is a big mining town north of the Arctic Circle. So there we were in April at this race, and a lot of the World Cup skiers, in fact almost all of them, would all get together and go do these northern races in the spring because the small organizers paid appearance money, so that was how they made their money. They'd go to these spring races, and everybody would race together, and it was a good time. They'd travel together in a bus, put us all up together. So there we are. It's early April, I think, and it's a beautiful sunny morning, 30-kilometer race in this little mining town, and it's wet. By the time the start comes around, the snow's melting. It's slush. And the only thing that's going to work is red klister. And so skating Koki had sort of pushed skating into the World Cup scene in the few previous years, and had done quite well with it. And people were skating quite a bit on all the trails, through transitions, around corners, and over the tops of hills to try to gain more speed. But they'd always showed up with wax on their skis. And this particular morning, with the red klister in the offing, everybody was kicking around the start, and nothing was working very well. And but I managed to get some sticky white red stuff on the bottom of my skis, and I went out. I skied 30 Ks. Started fairly early because I wasn't one of the top racers, and the faster people started behind me. And there was a particular Norwegian there that he was one of their top guys. Only, I think. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but if there's Norwegians out there, you can tell me how that's supposed to be pronounced. But he started behind me, and quite a ways actually. And so I'd finished before he got to the finish line, and I am standing there in the finish, taking off my skis, holding those things out there with that gooey klister on them. Oh God! And he comes into the stadium marathon skating because it was a fairly flat area, and he gets to the finish line and he picks up his skis, and I'm standing there watching him, and he holds his skis up and they are clean. And he won that race by 3 minutes. And the cat was out of the bag. I mean, that was probably the first time that anyone had gone to the start of an Olympic class race with no wax. So I stood there and watched that happen, and I went, So in some ways, that was the spring of '84, and I hadn't made the Olympic team, but I'd made this race to race in Scandinavia, and a lot of the top skiers quit that year after. It was an Olympic year, and my sister retired, Jim retired, I think Koki retired, a whole bunch of the people off the top of the team retired, and I felt a little bit like Forrest Gump, when the hurricane came through and took out all the other shrimp boats. There I was, all the other top contenders disappeared off the team, and at the same time, I was just sort of getting back into the skiing. All of a sudden the technique changed, and all these people that had been classic skiing for the last 10 years and had flawless technique, all that went out the window, and I said, this is my chance. So I came home that spring, and I don't know, I can't really recall whether it was that spring or the next spring, but I went home and I took a pair of the stiffest 210 classic skis that I had, and I went out in the garage, and I took a hacksaw and I chopped the tip off of them. Those are my skate skis. And so then one morning I got up, the alarm rang at 7 o'clock, and I put those skis in the back of that old Subaru. Might have been a Volvo, I can't remember anyway. And I drove down to Portage, and I pulled off there right where the old railroad depot used to be. And I took those skis and I set them down out there on that crust, and it was a sparkling morning. Put my poles on and stepped into those skis and pushed out into those open meadows going towards Spencer Glacier. And man, let me tell you, I thought I'd found lightning in a bottle. And then subsequent weekends and days when it was really nice, we skied into Spencer Glacier, we went to Skookum, I went across Portage Lake and I skated all the way up the Burns so you could look over into Prince William Sound. I did Tin Can, I did Center Creek and Juneau Creek and all those ones. And eventually we did the Eklutna Traverse. Tim Miller and myself and Tim Kelly skated the Eklutna Traverse one year. I think we went from Whiteout Pass to the Pitchler's Perch Hut in about 15 minutes. with a rope, we were all tied together so we wouldn't fall in a crevasse. So we had this rope and it was snaking between us, and it's like following a snake down the glacier. You're going 30, 35 miles an hour on that hard crust. It was amazing. So that's the thing that I guess I wanted to say about, what does Alaska and Anchorage have that a lot of other places don't have? And so when you come back from the World Cup circuit or wherever you might have been racing, the New Englanders go back there and the snow's melting and it's mud season and it's grubby, and you come back to Anchorage and the snow is melting out along the roads, and the snowbanks are all dirty, and you go to the trailheads and there's dog shit everywhere and it's all coming out. And but you can throw your skis in the back of your old Subaru and go out and find this amazing crust, and that is a gift that not everybody has. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. May we have a long and fruitful crust season this winter. All right, folks. I don't know if you've heard of her. Kikkan Randall was raised in Anchorage, Alaska, and is a trailblazing American cross-country skier and multi-sport athlete. A standout at East Anchorage High School and an early student in the APU Nordic Ski Center, she competed in 5 Olympic Games, 02, 06, 2010, 2014, and 2018, winning Olympic gold in the team sprint in 2018. I don't know if I've ever told you this. I cry every time I watch the video. I don't know how many times I've seen the video, but I cry every time. I don't know if you cry. It's like the best moment in sport ever. On the World Cup circuit, she claimed 3 sprint titles and 13 World Cup wins and earned 3 World Championship medals. A leader of the record-breaking U.S. women's team, she's now a mother of 2, and the executive director of NSAA. Kikkan's story is going to be about the circle of inspiration and the power of community, our greatest strength here in Anchorage. She'll tell us about the key different role models at different points in her career and the literal opportunity to chase them around the trails of Anchorage and how that shaped her love of skiing, led her to the heights of an Olympic podium, and now guide her passion for leading our ski community here in Anchorage. Welcome, Kikkan.
Well, first off, I have to say this has been an incredible crowd, so I want to thank every one of our speakers tonight. This is so cool. When I was getting ready for tonight, I really wanted to think of some new stories that hadn't been told. And the first memory that came to mind was a dark night at Kincaid. I remember pulling up in the car, watching my junior Nordic group start to head out the trail because I was always 5 minutes late. There I was in some homemade lycra tights with a hole in the knee, no base layers, an anorak with teal sleeves and a hot pink ribbon over the kangaroo pocket in the front, and a wool tasseled hat over my ears. So I've got my boots barely tied, and I set off after my group. We descend down the hill into the stadium, and I start to weave my way through the group, and I'm thinking, downhill, easy pickings, here we go. But then we cross the stadium, and we start to go into the woods. And now I am trying to churn through the snow and watch the coaches ahead and mimic their movements, and we go up what feels like the biggest mountain. And just as we're nearing the top, I'm trying to weave my way through the group, and I stick my edge into the side, and I fall down, and everybody goes skiing all around me. So now I'm behind again. So I'm scrambling up to catch up to everybody, and we dip down the other side, climb another mountain, and by the time I catch up to the group, I am dripping sweat under my wool hat. My heart is pounding out of my chest, but somehow my hands are still cold. What am I doing? Why do my parents make me do this? I don't know. So I catch up to the group, and we're at this intersection. And if you follow the trail straight, you go, continue to follow the lights. But there's this other path that's dark. And the coach says, all right, here we go. So they drop down into the darkness. So blindly follow along. And as we start to descend down this trail, I can't really see, but I'm feeling this exhilaration of weightlessness. My skis slip into the track, and I just feel like I'm locked onto a roller coaster. And I can feel the wind through my hair, and the other kids in the group start kind of whooping and hollering, and I can't help but get involved. So we get back to the lighted trail, and all of a sudden I can see again, and I notice that the coach is my Aunt Mary. And she goes, hey, what'd you think of Dark Alley? And I had to be like, whoa, maybe there is something to this cross-country skiing thing. But then the next winter, I whined and complained. I didn't want to do Junior Nordic, so I got signed up for the Alpine program because we had some fantastic Alaskan skiers, Hillary Lind, Tommy Moe, that were racing pretty fast in the Olympics, so I thought, I'm going to be an Alpine skier. So I'm doing Alpine racing on the weekends. I'm a 7th grader at Wendler Junior High School, and by that point, I didn't have my own Nordic skis anymore. So thankfully, the coach had some extra like combi skis and boots, and we would go over to Russian Jack and ski. And I remember this weekend I was at my grandparents' house, and they were cleaning out some old stuff, and they pulled out this ski team bag that was my Aunt Betsy's. So I'm kind of digging through, curious to see what's in there. And I pull out this suit, and it's navy blue, and it's got red and white down the stripes. And I realize it's my Aunt Betsy's 1980 Olympic suit. Well, I had been doing the cross-country team, just, after school to stay in shape. So I thought, okay, next race, I'm going to wear this suit. I'm going to look really fast. Then I caught a cold or the flu or something, and that whole next week I'm feeling miserable, and my coach was saying, well, I don't know if you should race, but I was like, I have a suit. I am wearing this suit. So I put on this suit, and we go out of the start. It's a classic race, and I immediately realize my wax isn't working. So I'm desperately trying to scramble and keep up with the group, and I'm feeling miserable because I've got this cold, but gosh darn it, I have the suit on. And I realize that I'm at Russian Jack skiing the same trails that I've seen my Aunt Betsy ski on these pictures on the wall at my grandparents' house. And so I cannot defame this suit. I have got to try hard. So I scramble to the finish and I make it. And my Aunt Betsy is there. And she goes, hey, not bad, in the suit there. So then a few years later, I end up at East High School, and I am a runner. I'm going to get a college scholarship, and I'm going to go run at a national level, maybe make it to the Olympics someday. And I'm still alpine racing at this point, but all my running friends decide that are joining the cross-country ski team. So I think, well, this is a great way to stay in shape. So I joined the cross-country ski team, and again, I'm out there scrambling around because my technique is terrible, but in cruising along the trails and following my teammates around, I end up having a lot of fun, and it does get me in good shape. So at the end of my sophomore year, I need a new training group to join because my high school running coach had moved out of town, and my mom was an attorney, and she happened to be working with this guy named Trig Davis, and he had a friend, Jim Galanis, who was starting this new program at APU. And so I thought, all right, well, I'll go have a chat with this guy, see what things go. And we met, and I gave Jim my training logs, and he took a look, and he said, well, I think you could be a decent skier. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll train with him over the summer. And over that summer, I tried roller skiing for the first time, back when we didn't wear helmets. So I survived. But over the course of that summer, I realized that cross-country skiing was actually this incredible blend of the speed and thrill of downhill skiing, but you could also see that hard work and that camaraderie like I had in running pay off. And the junior team was being coached by Frode Lillefeld, and he just made it so fun to push ourselves to see if we could double pole up and over this hill. And so by the end of that summer, I decided, okay, I think I'm going to give this ski thing a try. The next season is my senior year of high school, and we have a World Cup in the U.S. because Salt Lake is going to have the Olympics in 2002, so they're hosting a World Cup there to test everything out in 2001. And I end up making the team. So I get to go, I show up in Utah. I too have never raced a World Cup race. I remember walking into the area where all the wax cabins were, and Stefania Belmundo, who's not very big, just almost knocks me over. She's walking by with all her skis with her wax tech, and I remember having a poster of her on my wall. So I'm just like, whoa. But then I hear my name, Kikkan, come over. And I realize it's Nina. And she pulls me over into a wax cabin and introduces me to the Brico rep. And I don't know if you remember, but back in the early 2000s, Brico made some pretty fantastic glasses that looked like you were had bug eyes, but they were the coolest thing ever. So Nina introduces me to the Brico rep and says, you're going to want to look out for this one. And he hands me a pair of these glasses, and I am just over the moon. And she proceeds to parade me around to meet all the other reps there. And we go out and we race this World Cup, and I am nothing special, back in the pack. But I think the opportunity to be mentored by someone like Nina and walk around there really made me start to feel like I belonged there and something was possible. So then we are at the 2018 Olympics, and it's the after party after we win the gold medal. They have invited us all to the Team USA house, and we'd had the medal ceremony the night before. So I got this heavy thing to carry around, and I'm not used to how heavy it is, so I'm kind of swinging it around, and I end up spilling champagne all over Nina. Betsy's there to also celebrate, and it was this amazing moment that really things came full circle for me. But what was so interesting is at the time my phone buzzed, and of course it was buzzing a lot because people were excited about the gold medal, but it was from the Schumacher family. Greg Schumacher had been traveling as one of our team doctors, and he'd been bringing his kids along, and they said, we just watched your race, we're really psyched for you. And now, here we are, 8 years later, and we're approaching another Olympics. And I'm so excited to go out and watch our Olympians, including Gus Schumacher, go out and represent the U.S. because my son, Breck, now has Gus's poster on the wall and wants to wear Gus's Moo hat. And so it really is an amazing circle of inspiration that we have here in Anchorage. And I think the trails are the anchor of it. The community is the anchor of it. But I am so proud to be part of this NSAA team because of what we have all lived and benefited from and what we all know is possible. So let's keep this circle of inspiration going.
You guys could like stand up if you wanted to. They're awesome. They deserve a standing ovation. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. Thanks to the audience for being here. Thank you for sharing your stories, but like more importantly, thanks to the foundational members of the trail community here who have made it so that we have healthy assets that we can use to encourage our kids to get outside, that we can get outside on, this infrastructure that allows our community to be a wonderful place to live, work, play. Whether you're an Olympian or whether you're a toddler, Anchorage is a wonderful place to get outside and recreate because of the work that NSAA has been doing for 62 years. So thank you so much for being here tonight to support NSAA. Thank you to the many NSAA members. Thanks for supporting Alaska Trails and our Trail Tales series. We hope that we see you in February for our next Trail Tales event when we'll partner with Bike Anchorage. And until then, we'll see you out on the trails. And give one more round of applause for our storytellers. Thank you so much.